to the 6 weeks prior to the start of this project. Time spent by officers on-site processing complaints was 15% shorter, allowing officers to quickly move on to the next call. These results speak to the project being intelligence-led and that officers are in key areas and able to get to scenes quickly. Being community-focused is a key element of the services modernization plan, and this enhancement is allowing for our officers to be where the communities need us the most. The project allows for increased presence and visibility in patrol cars and foot, and in areas where street gangs are prevalent and we have seen some effectiveness as a deterrent. Communities have informed our members that they have noticed an increase of police presence and that they feel safer. Toronto Police have also made 38 referrals to community agencies, of which 17 were to gang exit programs. And finally, the Integrated Gang and Gun Task Force has held 6 of the 31 planned gang prevention town halls aimed at educating and supporting families who live in areas affected by street gangs and whose children may be at risk for recruitment. So with that update on the first 6 weeks of the project, I'll now take your questions.
Chief, you speak to the importance of when communities feel safe, just how they're able to live their lives like regular people. Can you tell how important it is for community members?
Yeah, it's hugely important, Steve, because we're talking about gun violence. You know, I'll go into different sections of the city and have completely different experiences. So I'll go into one high school and say, how many if you know someone who's been murdered? And I'll have, a quarter of the class put their hands up. In some areas, I'll have one person. But then I'll go into other neighborhoods and say that question, and almost everyone will put their hands up. So that lived experience where the street gangs are prevalent, when we start making those neighborhoods feel a little safer, it speaks volumes to how they feel. And but it's not just a policing issue. Our enforcement will continue, but enforcement really is reactive. People get shot, we show up, we investigate, we solve. Stepping in front of that, the proactive piece, I think, is a lot more critical, and working with other agencies in order to get it right, to have the sustainable components of street gang activity.
Chief, how do you account for the 3% drop in shootings? What causes that?
Well, it's the sum of all parts equaling the whole, Austin. So when we focus on street gangs specifically, a lot of things happen. As I stated earlier, we're getting more leads. We're getting to run with the cases a lot harder at the front end, yielding some successful results. When we talk about the bail program as an example, we did over 876 compliance checks. And so a lot of the criminals that know that we're out there are staying home. And the ones that aren't staying home, we're having more opportunities of making those apprehensions. So there are a lot of moving parts to help in why those numbers and why that reduction is there.
Chief, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because I know it's difficult, but maybe you can answer one of it. You say here 12 individuals who were free on bail or bail firearm related, and that was a big part of what you talked about last time we were here. Maybe you can tell us an example of at least one of those. Did you find a gun again, or what did you find in
Yes.
those 12? Can you explain
That was the charge. So when I speak of bail, it does get frustrating. So these are people that have been charged with a firearm offense and have been given bail, and we have cases where we're rearresting them while they're on bail and they're in possession of firearms. When we talk about the bail, we need to have that discussion, especially when it comes to firearm charges. To me, that's a big concern because it does twofold. A lot of work is put into, I think, one of the most serious types of criminal investigations that takes place that invokes the most harm in our communities. And when all that work is done and an apprehension is made, and that person is back out again in short order, A, the community, they feel like they are not being listened to. And so they lose hope in the system. And B, it's frustrating for the officers because a lot of time and effort's put in. This is dangerous work. And then when the solution is that the person's back out again and promised to be good and well behaved, that isn't necessarily the case all of the time.
Some of those reoffended with another weapon?
Yes, absolutely. They have reoffended with another firearm. That's correct.
Bail the second time?
Well, I don't know, but we'll be looking at that at the end of the project. We'll have some discussions on people that we have apprehended and bail that's being given, and whether or not they've reoffended again.
Chief, we're hearing from some police leaders about how to combat gun violence. Most recently, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police came out in favor of the potential of a municipal handgun ban to reduce gun violence. Can I ask where you stand on that? Could that make a difference when it comes to gun violence in Toronto?
Well, the mayor has spoken, and the concept is if one life is saved, then it's a good day. I will speak historically when it comes to street gangs and the investigations that we have done. There is little factor in folks with licensed guns. I know some have been stolen, though. So there are some benefits. It's a sum of all parts, again, equals a whole. There is not going to be this big bang, this will happen, and therefore you'll see this massive reduction. The reduction piece will involve a multitude of agencies involved in order to get it correct, to understand what the cause of this is. If we don't identify the cause, then this is going to go nowhere, and it'll go nowhere quite fast.
Is it your view that the majority of guns that are being used in the streets are coming from the U.S.?
Yes. Yes, most of the...
What percentage on that?
I believe it's close to 80%, somewhere along those lines.
Can I similarly ask your reaction to obviously when the middle of the election campaign, and I think it was yesterday that the party announced something like $250 million to tackle this exact issue. What's your response
Sorry,
to that?
could you repeat the question?
There was an announcement over the weekend that the Liberal Party has announced that they, if they're elected, would pledge, I think it's $250 million again towards gang prevention, specifically for like diversion programs and community supports. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I've made the statement when it comes to street gang violence, and if we're going to get it right, all three baskets have to be addressed. So the front, the at-risk young men and women, deterrent factors and all of those things are critical so they make the right decisions. The enforcement piece, when somebody is shot, that's our role and responsibility to make the apprehension. The one that gets left out all the time, and I mean all the time, are the high risk. The high-risk offenders, those who have shot before and who are out again, are most likely to shoot again for two reasons. Number one, either to finish the deal that they started, or number two, because they're going to be shot at. And so if the funds aren't put in to break that circle at that back end, then that front end is great, and we'll continue to make those arrests. But if you continuously ignore that third basket, and these have to be sustainable, not grant, but they have to be put in core, then I think that we would have a better solution by looking at all three baskets. But any funds from any opportunity, any avenue, is a good day.
Chief, are you able to tell us how many illegal guns you've been able to take off the street in the first 6 weeks?
No, I certainly can't speak to that now. It's early. It takes a while for all the testing, but I can say that as an organization, year to date, we've seized over 666 firearms.
When it comes to guns that are being smuggled, I mean, are you finding, you say it's an issue, are you finding that there are new or otherwise creative ways being used to get these weapons into Canada?
Yes, there are.
And what can you tell us about those?
I can tell you that I don't like telling bad guys how to be smarter. So if I start giving up those clues, it would provide criminal elements opportunities of using these methods. But you don't have to be over sophisticated to have guns cross the border. But you do have some. If you remember earlier this year where we had a vehicle with a gas tank cut out and 25 firearms put inside, there are cases along the lines where criminal elements learn how to bring firearms across the border. I know the federal government is taking a hard look at working with the CBSA and with law enforcement. We've got a very strong relationship, but are there opportunities to increase on that? That's a discussion that's being had, and we're working quite effectively right now.
Chief Saunders, you talked about proactive policing, though this is still in reaction to a spat of gun violence. How do we get out in front of this more and have another project before we see a rash of gun violence?
If you're asking on the proactive pieces, that would involve other agencies working with us. We do a lot of things. We have the focus tables, which have been beneficial, and we've seen some great results coming out of that. When you go into the communities, there is no one-size-fits-all, but there are some predominant themes when we talk of lack of opportunity, when we talk about high rates of poverty, when we talk about very high rates of not completing school. There is a symptom that's going to occur when you put all of these things things together. And when you look at the violent crimes that are happening in the city, it is in these very areas with these very parameters that I speak on where we see the high numbers of violence, high number of gun violence in particular, high number of street gang activity. So the policing element does play one factor, but all those other things that I spoke about are crucial. So it's no one agency. We will do our proactive policing, and we're working on the gang exit program, which is getting fantastic feedback, but there are a suite of other things that need to be put in play if we're going to get it right collectively. Did you have a question?
Yes, I don't want to harp on the election, but we are in the middle of a campaign. Is there something more broadly you want to hear from federal leaders when it comes to tackling gun violence?
No, I won't speak specifically to the election. I'll speak to what the issues are in the City of Toronto and do my best. I've had conversations with many members of government, all three levels of government. They've asked me questions on what does the City of Toronto need, and this is a time where I'm answering those questions when I speak to the issues, and hopefully if people identify the issues, then we can all move forward in the right direction on what steps and what funding can help us as the City of Toronto. Austin?
3% down, do you have specific numbers on that? How many shootings last?
No, I don't have the specific. I can certainly figure that out, and we'll get back to you on that.
Question. This whole project is because of a specific amount of money that was given to you for these 11 weeks. When it wraps up, are you concerned about what could happen, and are you hopeful or going to be lobbying for a similar amount of funding or more funding so you can keep going?
Well, like every project, when the project's over, it certainly doesn't mean that crime stops and we all hold hands and cross over into the sunset. We have to understand that we will continue to do what we do. There will be people that will be shooting other people, and we'll be doing our role of enforcing and making the apprehensions when necessary. We're quite good at it, but we have conversations with other agencies to figure out what are the sustainable things that can be put into the communities to help with the reduction piece. And I spoke about those three baskets, and I'm hoping that all three baskets have the funding streams that are necessary in order to get this properly.
We've also heard in recent weeks from the city of Mississauga as well, the region, and they've been talking about the influx of gun crime they've seen there, that there may be an issue with a lot of activity, gang activity specifically, coming from Toronto, winding up in Peel region. What do you say to that? And we've also heard, this is my second question here, that both the police service in Peel and Toronto Police Service have been working quite closely. So what is being done on that front to address the issue?
Well, there are a host of things, and this is not just the City of Toronto issue. This is an issue where you have all of those ingredients that I spoke to. If it's there, then the formula is created. You're going to have street gangs. The dominating factor of street gangs right now are a couple of things. Number one, drug distribution and what's happening there. That's on an increase. Number two is the human trafficking is another factor. And then number three, retribution, whether it be face-to-face, whether it be digitally, one person saying something to the other, and then people are going to get shot in the process. So this is happening in all of the cities, specifically more in the urban cities right across North America. These are discussions that I have with chiefs, and this year we've all seen an increase and an influx. Our role is to make sure that we keep all lanes open, that we work with all of our agencies at all levels, and most importantly, with the municipal agencies. So we've had a strong relationship with them, but we now have a stronger relationship with our border cities in particular, because the moment we close in and silo off, then we can be putting ourselves in a situation where it can increase harm to those members of the communities right across the GTA.
Two more questions. How are you working with Peel at this point to be able to address the issue?
Well, I don't want to speak to a whole host of the techniques that we're using, but I can tell you that we're working intelligence-led, and through that intelligence process, we are seeing links and trying to work together in how we can collectively solve any of the investigations that have those cross ties to it.
Certain communities where you're seeing the most arrests, where this project is really having success, and maybe how many communities are your officers working in?
Well, we're working right across the city, and the fact that it's intelligence-led, you can have flashpoints for different reasons. relatively quickly. Then all of a sudden, you'll start to see a spike in that neighborhood. And so when we gather that intelligence, we start formulating the plan. And at the midpoint, this gives us an opportunity to look at what we have done and figure out, do we need to tweak anything? Do we need to change anything to even enhance our abilities right now? So it is intelligence-led, and that is how we're going to continue to operate on this project. One last
Few weeks
question.
ago, you were given funding also for installing more CCTVs in communities and stuff like that from the province and from the city. Can you just give us an update as to where that stands? Are we still early in that process, or have you gotten to where?
I'm sorry, I
With the CCTV funding that you got
Yes.
a few weeks ago, where do we stand with that?
Yes, thank you. So we've located our locations in which we would like to have those CCTV cameras. It is based on where violent crimes have occurred, where the most violent crimes have occurred, where we think strategically it will enhance our abilities when it comes to gun violence. So we're surveying the areas right now and different types of methodology to put the cameras in place. So we're looking at, where in that spot would it be ideal, what partnerships are necessary in order to make it happen. So we're just at the logistical stage, but we've got it well underway, and hopefully we'll have those cameras up and running in short order. Not all 40, but definitely the first 10 or so in the next near future.
Just
One last
maybe
question.
also could update us, or maybe the chief can, but the shooting 1:30 a.m. on Portland and Wellington Street, it sounds like there was a woman that got caught in between. She was caught in the crossfire. Have you got an update on that? And also, if that is a person, not that obviously everybody matters, but if somebody just walking down the street getting hit, we've had too much of that. I want to know if you could address that as well.
Sorry, Joe, I don't have the granular points of that right now, but I can say, yes, it is concerning. The fact that there is a shooting to begin with becomes even more alarming when an innocent person or a person who had no involvement in that interaction gets shot with a bullet. They're indiscriminate, and that is a problem. I can tell you, though, based on most of the shootings that we've had, they are targeted, and that targeted piece speaks to the street gang subculture piece, the opportunity, and of course the target that they're looking for. So the vast majority of people that are getting shot are those that are either within the street gang subculture or live a high-risk lifestyle. And so.
The thing would be get the number of guns that you've taken off the street this year. I know you tweet those out all the time. Maybe we could get an update of that, not just inside of this, but
Yeah, I said year to date we've seen 666 firearms, and so you didn't get that, eh, Joe?
I guess that,
Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
This concludes today's news conference. Thank you.